Okay. All right. So we gather here today to discuss a topic that I know some people that wanted to come and couldn't make it then really were interested. But it's an interesting topic. I think it's also a beautiful topic to be learning right after Tisha B'Av. And it's the question on what brachas do you make on Mitzvah Yeshuva Aretz. There's actually two different brachas that you can make when you're doing Mitzvah Yeshuva Aretz. It kind of came up in my world recently because we just got an okay from the government, or official okay, it's not finalized yet, for 280, I think 9 or 7 new houses. And we're, God willing, mamash, I hope, right after the Chagim, I'm going to start a campaign for building our shul. And these two things kind of, went in my mind about brachas. One of the brachas I made already, one bracha I haven't made, and I might not be able to make it. I'll find out soon. Maybe one of you coming to visit can make it. All right. So the first bracha we're talking about is brachat Metziv Gevul Almana. It tells inside Masechet Brachot, Tabanan, Halvet B'tei Yisrael B'Yishuvan Omer Baruch Metziv Gevul Almana. If you see the houses of Am Yisrael sitting nicely, you do say bracha Metziv Gevul Almana. B'Churbanan Omer Baruch Dayan Emet. B'tei Mot Ha'olam B'Yishuvan Omer Baruch Beit Geim Yisach Hashem. B'Churbanan Omer En Lekmot Hashem Lekmot Tefiyah. So I'll tell you the truth, I never fully understood if you make a bracha, Baruch Hashem, Beit Gim Yisach Hashem, or you just say the bracha, or the pasuk. From Pnei Halacha, it seems you just say the pasuk. Also, for En Lekmot Hashem Lekmot Tefiyah, it's not a bracha, it's just a pasuk you say, as opposed to Beit Baruch. Over here, it's because it says Mamash Baruch, and right, Baruch Dayan Emet, it's Mamash bracha. But what does that mean? B'Yishuvan. So Rashi has something interesting. It says Kigon B'Yishuv Bait Sheni. Whatever that means, I'm not too sure. And this is a question. What does Rashi mean? Kigon be'yishuv ba'ichin. So that's the question number one. The second question that was asked was to a girsa of the Rif. We'll see in a second. The Rif has actually different girsa than our Mishnah, our Gemara. The Gemara says the Braita, right? And what does the Rif write? There's a different pitom sugya going on here. Also, what does it say? Over here it says Betei of Dei Kochavim, but that's like a classic girsa difference. But he does have an extra element to the bracha. If you look, he says so it says B'chuvanam Baruch Dayan Emet, same thing. Betei of Dei Kochavim b'Yishuvan Omer Beit Geim Yisach Hashem v'Yatziv Gevul Almana. U'B'churbanan Omer En Lekavot Hashem En Lekavot Tefiyah. So that's the same. But here he adds this extra thing. But the big question that we have, and this is kind of what the Achronim stumble on, is number one on Rashi, right? It says Kigon B'Yeshuv Bait Sheni. And the second is that Rif all of a sudden says Hareh B'tei Knisiyot. Like, what happened to the Yeshuvam? Give me 1 second. I apologize. Dog's barking a lot. I just want to see what's going on. Okay?
Sure.
All right. How do I pause? 1 second. Stop share. And no. Resume recording. All right, Avi, sorry we started already. But we'll do a real quick recap just to get you into the sugya, and then we're moving on. All right, so it says Tarbanan of Lebete Israel, B'Yishuvan Omer Baruch Metziv Gevul Almana. And if you look over here in Rashi, he says, what's the name? Baruch Metziv Gevul Almana, Kegon B'Yishuv Bait Sheni. So what is that referring to? Number one. Number two is the Rif. He has different gears. So he says, Lebete Knesiyot Shel Israel B'Yishuvan, not B'Tei Israel. So the Beit Yosef Bemet, obviously, tries to explain, understand what is he talking about. But he says something very interesting. He says, Nira, they Beitei Yisrael B'Shuvan, Hainu, Kishe Yoshvim Belo Satan, Velo Pega. So he wants to explain that what does that mean? It means that when Am Yisrael is sitting and they have no one bothering them. He likes to bring an example from the Gemara. And he says, and when was that really? That was right before the Churban. Ad miyom shachar beit midrash nigzar gzara beitem shetzadikim shechavu menanajma de betei Yisrael bechuvanan. Talks about what? Betei ashirei Yisrael ubalei tzidkut. ואם כן ביתי ישראל ביישובן, תקטני was talking about גבנה, נמי הוא, כלומר ביתי עשירי ישראל. When you have well-settled people, then you can make this bracha. Wow, Hashem, thank you for Metziv Gevul Almana. And why did Rashi say Kigon B'Yishuv Beit Sheni? Hainu Lamar Da'az Shayach Lamar Metziv Gevul Almana. Because before the Galut, in other words, in Beit Rishon, let's say, we didn't really go out to the Galut, so this bracha didn't exist. But once we became an Almana, then we had a bracha that say, thank you Hashem for bringing us back. They're all over the world. Maybe you have, Kilat Kodesh, the Muncie in Williamsburg, and you have in different places in the Oilam, Gozer's Green. You still don't make the bracha. And then can you be'eretz Yisrael dafka? Ubizman habayit. You just added in this Zman habayit. Rashi gamken. This is why you're right. Kigon be'ebayit sheni. So we see the Beit Yosef has a very big difficulty with Rashi. Why did he dafka write Kigon Beit Sheni? Number one. I am bringing his little discussion about the Rif, but he says maybe the Rif is talking about different Girsa, maybe the Rif has a slightly different approach, but he's referring to this idea of Mamash Miyushav. If you jump to the Shulchan Aruch, we'll see how B'tei Yisrael B'Yishuvan Kigon Beit Sheni Omer doesn't elaborate, explain. He just brings that tzitut, which really explains how much it maybe is difficult for him. Or on the other hand, right, the Shulchan Aruch we know is meant to be a summary reminder of what he wrote in the Beit Yosef. Obviously, you have to learn the Beit Yosef. But we see, if we're going to stop for 1 second, that we have this Hagdara, that it's actually according to Shulchan Aruch, Betei Yisrael B'Yishuvan, and Kigon Beit Sheni. So we learn from the Beit Yosef that it means what? It means after the Galut, when Am Yisrael sing nicely, and not in Chutzaretz. And the Be'er Tev brings B'Yishuvan Dafka B'Yitzav Lo B'Chul, but the Eliyara writes maybe B'Tei Knesiot. It's talking about also in Chul. He's not sure. Sorry. That's the Pri Megadim. The Be'er Tev says the Eliyahu Rabbah says no. Maybe Dafka B'Tei Knesiot is how you'll know. I think why? Because when you have a yishuv, until it doesn't have a mivne keva of a shul, it's not really keva. It's like arai kazeh. The fact that you have your first community solidified foundation building, that shows that the actual community is settling now. They're here to settle. Okay? So the Pri Megadim brings that the Maharsha says that even in Galut, it's Shayach. From the Pshat of the Gemara, it seems, I don't know, B'tei Yisrael B'Yishuvan, right? Like in Beit Sheni, it's a little nitchak. Sounds like it really should be only in Eretz Yisrael. All right, so far so good. I'm just talking to myself. All right. But all right, if Avi didn't interrupt, that means everything.
Good. It was all good.
Okay. All right. Now we have Mishnah Berurah. Mishnah Berurah does what the Mishnah Berurah likes to do and make it a little bit more seder with what's going on. That's why one of my friends says to me he's the bestseller because of this. And okay. Perush Betei Ashirei Yisrael Shemiyushuvim Betokef Ugvura. The fact that you can have a person that has a very respectable big house, that's showing that you're sitting and he's not worried, right? If he's willing to build a humongous mansion, it shows that he's not worried about getting kicked out. That we know in Beit Sheni there was still wealth going around. Maybe kama. The Beit Yosef, right? He said that maybe nowadays it's not clear. But we have to remember that nowadays the Beit Yosef and nowadays the Mishnah Berurah is not nowadays in Eretz Yisrael. We'll get to that soon. And some people say that Rashi talks about Beit Sheni. What is he talking about? That filu imhem miyushavim ata kegon k'mo b'Beit Sheni gam kemevarchim. So She's saying, okay, what does it mean, Rabbi? She's saying Baichi. He's bringing an example of a time period that Am Yisrael had, that things weren't perfect. They had a little bit the bothering of the Greeks and the Romans and the this and the that. But Basov, there was a settlement in Eretz Yisrael, and there was some type of a kingdom in Eretz Yisrael. And that's an example that you can go make the bracha on that.
But maybe I'm being, okay, I'll interrupt now. That way you'll feel comfortable. Isn't it just mefarish in the psukim that this gula is different and it's not going to be uprooted again? So there shouldn't be a worry about, it's a small house, a big house?
It is definitely mefurash, and we will hold that thought, as I say. Wait 2 more makoros, and then we'll talk about that. Excellent. The reef, though, we mentioned, has a different gear. So it says, Parush Beitei Yisrael b'Yishuvan Hainu b'Teknei Yisrael shepalim b'tocham v'chen na'agu ba'olam shemevochim al sha'arei betim ki imwad al Beitei Yisrael k'shorota b'yofia b'tikuna k'tav Rabbi Eliyahu Rabba da'en chiluk ben Eretz l'chu. That's why I said it up there. That Rabba b'afilu b'zman hazeh b'megadim b'tzedeh b'zman hazeh tov leverech yitzivam b'shem b'loshem malchut. Tov. So it's clear the Rif says that B'tei Yisrael means B'tei Knisiyot. Aruch HaShulchan says, listen, this is all very nice, but there's too many different chilukim here. We have maybe during like something like Bait Sheni, maybe it has to be Dafka Bezman Abayit, maybe it has to be Beit Knesset, maybe it has to be Dafka B'Eretz Yisrael, maybe B'tei Ashirim. And the Minhag, and they have Yirat Shamayim, he said. The only problem I have with this Aruch HaShulchan is what type of bracha is this? So guys, this is a bracha of Hoda'ah. We've learned already that when it comes to brachot Hoda'ah, it's very hard to say Safek brachot la'akel. The only way actually you can say it is maybe if you can't configure the right mitziut that you meant to make the bracha. So like your shechianu, if you're just happy in your heart, you're good to go. But maybe this is brachot hoda'ah, but we're not sure what we're saying thank you about. The flip side would be what? Is if I can go and I get all my bases covered. In other words, I show up to a new yeshuv that they have nice houses, they build a brand new shul, and you go into that shul and you make the bracha. Bemet, if you look in the shoot of Rav Dov Lior, it's exactly what he writes. He says, when you come to a new shuv that you were never inside before, a person should go into the shul, and then you make the bracha. And you only make it once. It's not once every 30 days. It's a bracha you make one time. And he writes right after a different tshuva, he writes, but if you were driving and all of a sudden you were wowed by this new yeshuv and you know that it's a well-settled yeshuv, you know when you see it, you're like, oh, wow. Okay, I can tell you the feeling I've had like that, I had it so far twice in my lifetime with 2 different places. Actually 3 sad. Well, the third one is a very sad one. But the first one was Harish, and all of a sudden it popped out of nowhere, like dandelions. The second one is also Karmei Gat. I don't know if you guys have gone by Karmei Gat, but that place just popped out of nowhere. And I drive by it quite often because I work in Kiryat Gat, and every time I'm in shock with how big it's popping. Another one actually is Ramat Beit Shemesh, which does, I don't know about you guys, but I come from Route 35, right? And it's not stopping. And every single apartment building there has another house, another laundry being hung outside. So they're just filling up. The sad one is actually down south, when it's the amount of Bedouin illegal housing. Wow, where do those things come from? But those yeshuvim are not beautiful big houses. Those are all tin, but there are tons of them. In any event, why am I telling you this? Because there are scenarios that you can go and driving in Eretz Yisrael. Obviously, you're like, whoa, I've never been here before. And look, you drive through Yudah v'Shomron, and you pass these new yeshuvim, and you're like, whoa, look at these stunning houses. Look at this beautiful looking place. So the Rav Dov Lior, you can make a bracha. I know Rav Melamed, when it comes to the brachas of seeing things, He doesn't like that. He doesn't like if you're driving and you don't stop, you're just driving by, you make the bracha. He doesn't really like it. I think it's mamash has to do with Hargashat Halev. If you're wowed that you almost crashed your car because you were so amazed by the view or so amazed by this yishuv, I think it's clear that you can make the bracha. But definitely, Rav Dov Lior says to cover all your bases, you should be saying the bracha in the shul. But with what Avi pointed out and said, in Shuta Selach Harav, Rav Chaim David Levi, he asked the questions about do we make this bracha b'chal nowadays. He goes through it, mamash. He summarizes the entire sugya in a beautiful way. He does, and he says, "Aval kasher zachinu l'shilton Yisrael be'eretz Yisrael, harei sheshilmu shnei tnaim shledat maran lefi shitat Rashi nitan levarach bracha zot, which is what that you have a nice sitting house." And according to the other one, that you have the beautiful of avira of towards the Geulah. So you have these things, and he points out, "Masha Ereveinu Mesaviv Adayim Mitaklim Lanu Enzo Ma'akev Klal Shedvar Ze En Lo Sof Ad She'yavo Mishat Tzidkenu V'Yikeim Banu Mikdash HaKatuv V'Chulei Lo Yisa Goy Goy Acher Aval Beinatayim Zechinu Hashem V'Anu זכינו השם, ואנו חיים בארצנו, תחת שלטון ישראל, ועצם היישוב היהודי הוא ביתי ישראל ויישובם. That's ממש the pshat of what it is. Right? וניתן לברך ברכה זו בשם ומלכות. But then this is a classic of Chaim David Levi with, it shows his anava. Right? The man was the chief rabbi of Tel Aviv, wrote one of the most simplistic halachic books that up until Pnei Halacha, that was the learning book that everyone learned in school. It was Gansford, Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, and then you graduated into Makor Chaim Kitzur Shulchan Aruch. He was meant to be the Rishon LeZion, but he didn't win. Rav Vadia beat him. And what does he write? Ela v'katavti b'ktsara b'sefer Makor Chaim Shalem. Ela shelo ra'iti atzmi rashai lifsok halacha b'sefer shenoad lahamonei am lemaaseh. I wrote a halacha book lemaaseh for the Klal Yisrael. V'devar shu chidush shechem b'galut lo pirachnu ela al betei knesiot b'yafiyam v'hadaram, like the Mishnah Berurah mentions. V'af gam zot yesh chalku v'kavu she'en leberach bracha zot v'shol malchut b'gin hasafek nofel, like the Aruch HaShulchan. V'yesh hachatavu shelo na'agu bracha zot mivnei she'yinu b'pirushim, like the Aruch HaShulchan again. V'im ken leberach bracha zot ata achrei akamat minat Yisrael u'chidush halchati gadol. ולא רציתי ליטול על עצמי אחריות פסיקה זאת במקום גדולים אל תעמוד. Wow. And he says, אבל כך קראתי פעם בעיתון, that the Gaon Rav Tzvi Yehuda Kook שליטה, בביקורו באחד היישובים החדשים ברך ברוך מציב גבול אמנה, בשם מלכות. וברור שלפי כל הנ"ל, everything we said, ודאי שנכון עשה. Why? Because he understands what Avi was saying, that that's it, we're at the end, guys. So because of this, it's clear that you're meant to make the bracha. And Rav Chaim David Levi, with his big anava, didn't want to go right in his book. And then he goes on and says, by the way, what you asked about every 30 days, that is an interesting question. He writes, the bracha probably was for tourists, because in Eretz Yisrael, when you're living here, you don't really feel, right, the newness. And it's a person that comes to visit once in a while. And that brings me to the next question, was what happens if, let's say, I moved to a yishuv, or you are in a yishuv somewhere, and you didn't make the bracha the first time you came. And 30 days later, you're like, oh, wait, can't make the bracha or not. לפי דעתי נראה פשוט, דאינו מברך לאחר כמה חודשים, כיוון שראה יישוב כל הזמן, ומה שלא בירך בתחילה עבר זמנו. Right? You definitely lost the wow effect. So you don't make the bracha. So if we do a quick sikum of what we just spoke about now, we said that we have a bracha Baruch Metziv Gevul Almana. The reason why this popped up in my oilam is we got an Ishur Mimshalah, like I mentioned, for 287 or 289, I don't remember, houses, and it's called a new yishuv. It's not. It's a very big deal. So I already made the following bracha that we're going to learn about in a moment. But this bracha, I was like, I also should speak about this bracha. Do you make the bracha or not? And it's pretty clear that if you show up to a new yishuv and you are amazed by the beauty and the amazement that Am Yisrael Mamash is becoming back in its home and is settling and everything's growing so beautifully, there's no reason you shouldn't make the bracha. Now, this is not to say a brand new yishuv. It says yishuv that you haven't been there before. So, for example, I know for a fact that there are a bunch of yishuvim I've never been to in my life in Eretz Yisrael. If I show up to those yishuvim, a yishuv also means like a city, and I'm wowed. You're blown away. You're drawn back by the movement of the Jews settling the land. You can make the bracha. Okay. The next bracha I want to talk about is what bsorot tovot. All right, we have two brachas. So when a person hears good news, he can make. The first is, or one of them is shechianu. Another one is brachat tov metiv. All right, Masechet Brachot in the Mishnah it says, Al hakshamim va'bsorot tovot omer baruch hatov va'metiv va'al shmot orot omer baruch dayan hamet. And the Gemara goes on and says, the shema mashma hainu bebsorot tovot. B'tnan bsorot tovot omer baruch hatov metiv. We were talking about before over there, shechianu, you make a shechianu, but here you talk about tov metiv. What's the difference between them? He says, "Ela idi v'idi dechaze mechaze v'lo kasha." Don't worry, it's not hard. Ha da'ata puta, ha da'ata tova. V'yibaydema ha v'ha da'ata tova. Now, both of them talk about good stuff. V'lo kasha. Ha da'it le ala, ha da'leit le ala. But if also something happened to him, so then he also makes a bracha. So we say, "Bana bait chadash v'kana kelim chadashim v'mabur shachinyan v'yigan zman hazeh shelo v'shel acherim omer otov metiv lo kasher hadi it leishutfut ad leishutfut v'atanya kitzur shedavar al shelo hu omer baruch shachinyan v'kivanu al shel chavo omer baruch hametov v'ametiv." So what is we saying? We're saying like this: that there are two brachas a person makes when he has a good shmu'ah, hears of good news. And what are they? The one that he makes is brakat shechianu, when it's a private, what's the word? A private good news. Something personal. Thank you. Not private. Thank you. I was like, whoa, I'm talking really Israeli here. When it's personal, and on the other hand, when it is a communal or someone else has benefit from this good news, then you also make a tov v'ameitiv. All right. So beginning there is like, wait a second, maybe we're talking about Geshem, right? The Atapulta, the little bit of rain came down, and then he wasn't sure if he should make it. And the other one, no, it came down a lot, so you make the bracha. Another time we said that he owned land, or maybe he didn't own land, so maybe he didn't really benefit. And then we wanted to go and make it very, very clear that no, when talking about something that's personal as opposed to something that's not personal. Is there any scenario that if a person doesn't have another shutaf, he doesn't make the metiv? Tanya, we said a person that had yalda ishto zachar omer bracha metiv. So you say, no, what do you mean? You have your wife. She also benefited from it. Okay, so again, the klal barzel is what? Is if there's another person that has enjoyment from this good news, you make a tov v'ametiv. Yerushalmi, though, and this is important, says something interesting. Amar Bizera, Tani Taman, Ra'a Zol Ba'al Olam. All of a sudden, prices went down. Vesova Ba'al Olam, and all of a sudden, there's so much benefit. No one.
Abundance.
What?
Abundance.
Thank you, abundance. That's what I'm looking for. Nahar must speak. The Medina. All of a sudden, there's tons. There's a river that just came out. What do you do? Tov metiv. So you see from this Yerushalmi, there's something very important. It mamash has to do with what's affecting your pocket. In other words, it's not just bsorot tovot. You heard a good news, but it's something that you mamash feel the benefit directly, and it's something communal. Where would be the nafkamina to such a thing? What happens if all of a sudden you have news that your government or the country found natural gases? do you make a Tov Metiv? What do you do if all of a sudden they announce that they're building in the Yishuv another 200 or Yishuv 110, 120 houses, and now they're adding another 280 something houses? Wow, that's a huge amount. Think about it. The value of your house just skyrockets. So does the mamash have to go and touch your pocket or not? So if we look in the Shulchan Aruch, he says, Al shmuot shem tovot lo levado, v'im hem tovot lo v'achrim atom metiv. He doesn't talk about the pocket. And the Magen Avraham, though, right, dafka shemam b'fi adam ne'eman. This is a very important point. Well, this is dafka. When do you make the bracha? When you hear from someone that you can trust. Why does that make a difference? Because what happens if you read it in the newspaper? Okay, so let's go, for example, the gas. The gas you heard about in the newspaper that they found natural gases. That's amazing for the Medina as a whole. But is it going to affect you directly? Officially, it's meant to. Have we felt it in our pocket? I don't know if any of us realize that now we could splurge and buy Wagyu steaks, but I think that maybe in the long run, if we, you look at what happened over history, maybe, yeah, of course, once they found natural gases, the prices of electricity compared to the rest of the world didn't really go up. It's also really, really exciting. I don't know. So that might be a good question. Do you make a bracha tov metiv about that or not? Another question is, can you really trust that it was found? Or can you really trust that whatever they say how it's going to affect you, it's really going to be effective? So that would jump me to, let's say, the next one, which is our Yishuv. So the way it works is they announce that the government's going to build 1,000-something houses right in Eli and 280-something houses in Adora, and across the street from us, 2 kilometers from us, east, Telem, which is literally in 500 meters, what's it called? Radius of 500 meters from us. They're going to get another 150 houses. So we're going to hopefully hit within the next 5 to 10 years 1,000 houses in our little small area that right now has hardly 250 houses altogether. So how does that work? They just announced it. It has to pass 2 more va'adot. There's one va'adah that passes that says yes, and then there's another va'adah that says okay. We know we said yes in the news. We know that we actually said officially yes, and we told the American government we're doing it, but really we're only going to give you okay for. But the chances of them not, even giving us an okay for less than 100, like there's no question. They're for sure going to give us okay for about a certain amount, and any amount is definitely will affect the real estate where I live. But besides that, will affect the community as a whole. It's such a happy thing for the entire community. So at the beginning, I said, no, I only want to make the bracha out loud when we have a l'chaim, once it's final. And then they did, they invited one of the ministers, Orit Struk, came to our yeshuv the same day that we were doing a Chanukhat. They finished like the garden area, or right by the children's library in our yeshuv. So I said, I can make a tov metiv because it's good news. It's for sure going to affect us. It's for sure going to happen. The question is this going to be 200 and something, or it's going to be, let's say, 100? Chas v'shalom, if anyone heard me in my yeshuv say just 100, I would have been thrown out of the yeshuv. But the fact is that it's still enough believing that it wasn't just a source. It was actually said by Smartress. It was actually brought up again by Struk. And she said to us, Mamash, how they fought to get Adora on the list, and we're a strategic point in our area. So I felt it was enough that you can trust. It wasn't just written in the paper. But it's a very interesting feeling to have a bracha to make that's not just on the private happiness, but it's actually on the happiness that affects the community as a whole. So that's the second bracha. So if we summarize what we just learned tonight, we learned about 2 different brachot, that when you're doing mitzvah yeshuva arish, and I think I was taught at the beginning, I mentioned those. I think it's really beautiful. We're learning this mamash a few days after Tisha B'Av. There are 2 brachas you can make. Number 1 is brachat Metziv Gevul Almana, which clearly, when you have a beautiful, new, growing community and yeshuv in Eretz Yisrael, city that you haven't been to before, you meant to make a bracha. And number 2 is a tov metiv, when you feel how all these different things are happening and you get Yishrei B'niyah and the real estate's going up and people moving in, and they found maybe if there was a natural glasses, or if all of a sudden you found under your no, maybe, so, yeah, if you were in your kitchen and under the stove, you found a big treasure that you were dreaming about. So then you make the bracha. Same too here. This is definitely another example. So those are two brachot you can make mitzvah yeshuva aretz. That's all. So
Should it matter if even if I'm sorry, go ahead, go Nick.
Two questions. One is why I don't know, maybe it's just me, why have I never heard of the first one at least? And
so
two would be let's say what would the opposite be? Meaning, let's say chas v'shalom, they would announce that we're agreeing to a building freeze everywhere, over the green line or whatever it is. Is there the opposite, meaning some type of mourning that has to go on the other way, as opposed to, obviously with this we do a bracha. Is there something we would do if the opposite chas v'shalom would happen?
All right, I'm going to stop recording. 1 second. No, it's working. 1 second. Recording. So we mentioned in the beginning of this year, it says, Banan, our Rebbe Teis Shabbat Yeshivan Omer Baruch Metziv Gevul Almana. Bechul Banan, you say Baruch Dan Emet. If there's a Akira, a Girush from Gush Katif Chas v'shalom, when that happened. So first of all, a lot of poskim say you do a kriya because it's such a sad thing. Not much to ripping Eretz Yisrael. But two is you make the bracha Baruch Dan Emet. Yeah, for sure. I would say even more than that. I would mamash give a psak that if someone is in Yudav Shomron and he was about to start building, and for some reason there's a freeze, and now he has to push off all his plans, that he definitely can make a bracha of Dayan Haemet. On the other hand, obviously you have to take into account, because usually if you did start already, they're not going to all of a sudden tell you to freeze and how long you're freezing for. But there was a time period that, say, Gush Etzion, which is absolutely crazy, doesn't have any Sharei B'niyah to continue growing. It's mind-boggling. Beit El got like 1,500, and they only got those extras because of only. That's a horrible thing, the pigua. But they're not. That's it. They're frozen right now. So that's the answer. It's a horrible thing. Once there's a freeze.
Mm-hmm. But it's a personal. So you're saying it would be a personal bracha of Baruch
yeah. We say Baruch Emet is when you have really bad news. I didn't. The truth is, it's a great question because we didn't go into it. But in the Gemara, it talks about when you lost money. If you lost a lot of money, it does talk about if you got a Yerusha, so you say two brachas, Shechianu and Emet, because someone passed away. But if a person lost a lot of money and you heard very bad news, someone passed away, you make a Dan Emet. Same thing here. If you're really, really sad and it's not good. I mean, I could totally see the head Rosh Moatzet Efrat or Gush Etzion making that bracha when they saw they weren't on the list. I mean, think about it. It kills your growth, your natural growth.
You shouldn't have to wait necessarily to hear if it's confirmed or whatever it is, because at least on the Tov Metziv, because unlike Metziv Gevul Almana, that's a bracha in the Metziut, whereas Tov Metziv is a bracha in your Hagasha. So if you got good news,
you're saying that it's not right? No, but in the poskim, and that's why I brought it. It does talk about Rav Nevinsal. Okay. Rav Nevinsal talks about the newspaper. How trustworthy is the media? He gets into that a little. Because again, a person could make up any news, and then that sounds like good Hagashat Halev, but the guy was lying to you, right? How many politicians? Not that this happens anywhere in Eretz Yisrael, but in the world there are politicians that they start saying a million things if you vote me in. So the guy got voted, and now you're gonna make brachas? No,
right? But no, I hear. But there's a difference between if something was legitimate and it was planned and it's on the list, and then there's a freeze, which means something else happened after.
No, that doesn't take. Yeah. So that for sure. With that said, like I mentioned, there's va'adot. In other words, the government can say we're going to give an ishur for 280 something, but the va'adah could say, listen, it's really nice you promised it, but when push comes to shove, we have to take into account the Americans, we're taking into account the Arabs, we're taking into account also our budget, or whatever, something.
And also, can you have a thing where, like with the forma, where half the people make a tov nativ and half the people make a bruch danamet? Is
Oh,
that
for sure. Yeah, for sure. That's again, that's also that's part of the great question that Nathan asked. Because yeah, a person, Lo Aleinu, Reuven's father passes away. He makes two brachas. Diane met, and then all of a sudden you make a shechian or a tov metiv because you got Yerusha.
But that's for two different things, not for the same thing. That's for two
Oh,
different
you're
reasons.
saying for one person, it's well, yeah, I
Well,
guess it could.
just look at the current political situation.
No, I know that's what obvious that was obvious.
Or if one person, let's keep it simple. If one person, if one person loses money, and his loss is your gain.
Right. I
So
was gonna say if you have someone shorted a company, let's do it that way. And he got no, yeah, for sure. If a person shorted a company and the company now went bankrupt or is almost going bankrupt, so then for sure the guy who's losing his money makes a dayan hemet, and the other guy who made money will make a shechianu for sure. I would say that he shouldn't make it out loud and do like a selfie picture when everyone else is mourning.
and not a tov nativ because it's not communal, or
Exactly.
I assume.
He shouldn't make maybe he shouldn't make a tov metiv, even though he has a friend that's good for him also. But you're not meant to, you don't put salt in the wounds, and you should be mature, not immature. All these little slight references to things that are occurring. Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Bezrat Hashem, next month, I'll tell you guys, we're starting Elul. And I'm open for ideas. I can tell you that I just recently, due to being asked to conduct a wedding, is that the word?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I was asked to